Good morning, everyone. My name is Reverend Alice Reid, and I am the spiritual leader here at Centers for Spiritual Living, Capistrano Valley. I want to start our time together with a prayer practice. There's a lot going on in our region here in Orange County and LA County, and I think it would be appropriate for us to have a moment of silence followed by a prayer for all those that have been affected by the wildfires that are just some 70 or 80 miles north of us. And so if you will, I'll invite you to simply go within for just a few moments of silence to really recognize all those that are moving through difficult times right now. And in this peaceful stillness that we have created together in this community, I know that there is indeed a power and a presence that moves in, as, and through all life. I know that this benevolent presence that is forever creating out of itself is supportive. I trust that all of our friends and family and acquaintances who might be challenged right now north of us are being supported, that resources are being made available, that they have easy access to those resources, that grace is leading the way for all life, both human, animal, Mother Earth, all of it is being supported, that all the prayers and well-being and deep desires for peace that are raised up throughout our country are lifting up those that have been affected by these fires. And so it is with a grateful heart that I recognize this love and this compassion that transcends all divides. It doesn't know any party affiliation. It doesn't know differing of opinions. It only knows how to pour love out from within ourselves and into the world around us. And so I am grateful for our open hearts and our willing minds as we support our neighbors in love. And so it is. Thank you for that. I know it's heavy on our minds. I imagine that either you know someone who is affected, or you know someone who knows someone that's affected by the terrible fires, not one, but 4 major fires just north of us. And that is what the world serves up from time to time. We have these experiences that are unexpected, that we don't even see coming. And so we do turn to that place of power first before we reach out. I will tell you that Centers for Spiritual Living has posting on their website and on social media, and it's csl.org, centersforspiritualliving.org. And if you go to that website, there's a place where you can click through if you want to support many of the agencies that are really stepping up to support our neighbors up north. And there's also a couple of our communities that are offering shelter and sanctuary for many of the people that have been evacuated in their area. Whew. And we know it's not over yet, so we'll continue to hold them in peace and in prayer. So I do want to start our time together by saying good morning to you. I'm glad that you're here with us at Capistrano Valley. This is a lovely, supportive, powerful community that has been around for over 55 years, I think. I think we're about at that place. This community continues to move through all kinds of change, and we're having a community meeting about 11:45 after the service so that I can share with you some of the updates that are happening for us here. I think 2025 is shaping up to be a year of transition, and so we'll talk about that a little bit this afternoon. And Meanwhile, meanwhile, we have an annual theme that we're working with this year, rising higher, growing deeper. What a great way to move from the grand rising of 2024 and begin to take all the wonderful things that we talked about and shared in 2024 and take it to the next level. And this month, our theme is stretching into possibility. Stretching into possibility. And then today, our talk title is Making Space for It. And in January, Centers for Spiritual Living all around the country, even the planet, many of us revisit the first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind textbook. And last week we talked about the thing itself. We talked about this power and presence, this invisible and yet substantive life force that we are working with. And so we had a lovely experience with music and chanting and some sharing. And this week we're looking at the law. Now, if you have been here before, I am a big fan of talking about this creative process that we work with in this philosophy. And that creative process is how things move from thought to demonstration. And in class, we talk about it as the seed, the soil, and the plant. It represents universal mind, the law, and then the manifestation of form. So we work with these principles. They're spiritual scientific principles that we're working with. And last week we talked about universal mind, and today we're talking about the law or the soil. We're talking about how things work, so to speak. And the first chapter is entitled The Thing Itself, and the second chapter is entitled The Way It Works. And I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about the way it works. There's last week we talked about the agency that we had with the thing itself, with the creative life force that is forever pouring itself into life. And today we're going to talk about the law, and that's where our agency meets the creative process. And so I have this quote from the second chapter. Our belief sets the limit to our demonstration of a principle which of itself is without limit. It is ready to fill everything because it is infinite. So it is not a question of its willingness nor its ability. It is entirely a question of our own receptivity. Now, I don't know about you, but I grew up in a kind of Judeo-Christian type of upbringing where I was given a sense of deity that was outside of myself, kind of a God, sky god, if you will, somebody that I had to plead with and hopefully behave. I kind of took the model of, parent-child to my relationship with a power greater than myself, and I began to have this conditional relationship with spirit. I had a conditional relationship with God. But what we have learned in Centers for Spiritual Living as we've studied principle is that there are no conditions that any outside force puts on us. We don't have to only receive our good if we behave. It doesn't work that way. Although, is anybody else have that experience of kind of having God and that model of if you behave, you'll get your good? Have that experience growing up? And I don't know about you, but I have a distinct memory of sitting at my grandmother's table and her sharing with me that if I didn't stop kicking my legs under the table, the devil would get me. I'm 4 or 5 years old. I have no ability to really filter or understand what she's saying. It's just something that got planted in me. And so when we are working with this beautiful thing we refer to as principle or the law, it doesn't care if I kick my legs under the table. As Arpad likes to start when he's presiding, he likes to start and say, doesn't matter what you did last night, you're welcome here. And that's true. That's absolutely true. And it doesn't matter what you have done or said in the past, the law receives you with complete openness. It simply says yes to you. There's a consistency about it that we have available to us. And as Holmes says in here, it is not a question of its willingness nor its ability. It is a question of our own receptivity. It's a question of our own receptivity. Every gardener knows that not all seeds germinate, right? And gardeners in the room, people who work with planting things, not all seeds germinate. And as a matter of fact, if I go to the store and I buy a packet of seeds and I lay them out on the counter and I walk away from them, nothing's going to happen. They are not going to germinate. And the process of germination is when you plant a seed in the dark and it receives nutrients from the soil, and then the soil causes it to crack open and grow. And that's very much like the law that we're working with. We're working with a law that is consistent and that will germinate the seed thoughts that we have. And yet, when I say that, some of you may be thinking, you mean when I told somebody I love that I'm angry with them, that I hate them, that, do you mean that that's going to create? Well, no. One thought, I can't have a negative or a positive thought and expect that to just create. If I have this idea, if I decide to say, oh, well, this philosophy that we're working with says that my thoughts create, so, okay, thank God I'm rich. Where's my money? Let me check my bank account. Where's my phone? No, it doesn't work that way. The way the law works is that it works with our tendencies of thought and belief, like a combination of them. Another quote from Ernest Holmes, the sum total of our thought, will, purpose, and belief creates a tendency in this law that causes it to react to us according to the sum total of our belief. And so I can say, thank God I'm rich, and then I can notice all the places in me that doesn't believe that. And I can I can choose to transmute or transcend those old ideas. And the law responds to my beliefs. It responds to the word, it responds to my beliefs, but I have to cultivate those beliefs because, at 4 years old, I was told there was a devil and it was going to get me if I misbehaved. I mean, that's a very limiting thought to have anchored into a child, and it did play out. I can tell you that as a young woman, and even as a young adult, before I was introduced to this philosophy, I had a real deep-seated fear of evil that was planted in me a long time ago. Now, if you're new to this philosophy, you might be surprised to know that we don't believe in evil. We don't believe in the devil. We definitely believe in the manifestation of evil acts. We definitely believe in the fact that people can do awful things, but it is not an entity that I have no agency over. I have the power to use my consciousness in intentional and productive ways, and I am not at the mercy of some outside entity. And so we are working with this powerful idea of a principle for creation, and we get to direct that principle. We have agency in that. I stumbled across a place in the Science of Mind textbook. This, if you're not familiar with it, mine's really beat up and I refuse to let it go. I have a beautiful leather-bound copy that was given to me by my teacher, and I keep it in the altar in my office, but I love my first copy of the Science of Mind textbook because I've been, I put my energy into it. Anyway, yeah, I've got pages missing, the binding is broken, but I still turn to it all the time. And on page 404, towards the bottom, paragraph 3, Holmes, in the general summary, tells us how we can deal with those unproductive thought tendencies and patterns that we carry around with us, like, the devil's going to get me. Like, whatever I don't think anybody's immune. If you are, please talk to me after the service. I'd love to hear about that. But in the meantime, I don't think any of us are really immune to, like, negative thought patterns that somehow got placed in us, in our youth or through the community that we were brought up in or the family or places we've worked. And so in this part of the textbook, he gives us a remedy for dealing with fear and limiting thought ideas. He tells us that if we bring into any situation 3 important components, that we can transcend fear and limiting ideas. And those components are faith, knowledge, and love. Faith, knowledge, and love. And then when we combine those 3 things, we can shift our thinking and our consciousness. See, look, now we're talking about the law today, and we're going to talk more about that page 404, but I sort of want to give you a preview to that. Like, the law is, if I want to believe that there's an evil entity outside of myself, the law is like, sure, I can have that. And I will project that. That idea and that imagery, I will project that kind of victim mentality into my relationships and into the people that I see and out into the general public. And it isn't until I come to a place where I'm willing to have faith that there's another reality that I can participate in. And when I know that I'm working with a science, this is where the knowledge comes in, I'm working with a scientific practice where I can work with my consciousness to cultivate a higher idea, a limitless idea, and then I can really drop into that place of powerful love. Well, that's how we transcend. That's one of the mechanisms that we can use to begin to really lift ourselves up out of limiting experiences. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. Oftentimes we identify our thoughts with our thoughts so much that we don't even recognize that we're having these limiting thought patterns. And so it's kind of I like to say, it's kind of a messed up system. Like, I don't see it because I'm so close to it. And then something blows up in my life, like right here. And then I'm like, oh, I need to pay attention to that. And sometimes it's big, sometimes it's subtle. I mean, many of us have been practitioners of this philosophy for a long time, so hopefully your little triggers are more subtle. I can remember when I first came to this philosophy, my triggers were big. Just this morning, I got a text message from one of our board members that said, "Can I talk to you for a couple minutes this morning before service?" And immediately I was like, what'd I do? And then I recognized the thought pattern that's very old, I no longer have use for, and I simply said to myself, oh, I'm sure it's nothing. But I still had that initial, what'd I do? What'd I do that's wrong? Anybody have that? Yeah, it's so ingrained in us. And so that's why we show up every Sunday. That's why we take classes. That's why we read spiritual literature. That's why we have prayer partners. That's why we do meditation, so that we can continue to clear our consciousness from unproductive, useless, limited thinking. One of the things I really wanted to look at this morning was this idea of surrender. Now, I've spent last week and half of my talk talking about a power and a powerful way to be in the universe. And now I'm going to talk about surrender. Now, I imagine some of you are feeling like, huh? Most of you are seasoned in this philosophy and probably get where I'm going with this. Surrender is a place where we can let go of the things that we create of our own steam, and we can connect with the divine pattern of life, that thing that makes the grass grow. And then that really lifts us up out of our own effort into a greater effort for whatever it is we want to create. Holmes has this great quote. I don't have the actual attribute, but it's on the Science of Mind Archives website, and it's Ernest Holmes. And he says, true non-resistance is the surrender of every arrogant attitude of mind to good. I'm going to read that one again. True non-resistance is the surrender of every arrogant attitude of mind lowercase, to the good, G, uppercase. So Holmes he's talking about what do you think he means by the arrogance of mind? The arrogant attitude of mind. He's talking about that place where, I have to believe it happens to every one of us every once in a while, where we start having demonstrations, things can't start going our way, and we're sort of like, look at what I'm creating. It reminds me of the old joke of the scientists who go up to God and they say, God, we have figured out how to create life. We do not need you anymore. And God says, really? Okay, show me. So the scientist walks up and he reaches down and he scoops up a handful of dirt. And God says, what? Create your own dirt. That's what he means by the arrogant attitude of mind. We forget. We get so entrenched in our relationship with the divine and all this wonderful creating that we're doing that we forget that there is a power for good in the universe greater than us, and that we can use it. Absolutely. God, it is God's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. Spirit's good pleasure to move through us and express by us and create through us. But it is the power of Spirit. It's the thing that germinates the seed. It's the thing that makes the grass grow. It's the energy that keeps the stars and the planets aligned, that beats your heart, that pumps blood through 8 miles of arteries and veins in your body temple. And so as we begin to work with this thing called the law, the way that it works, we are to remember that there is some reverence to be had in this power that we are freely given. There is awe that we should feel. There is never a time that I don't experience awe when someone shares their demonstration with me. Now, I've been in this teaching since 1999, 2000, and we have a practitioner class, and we were checking in our first class on Wednesday morning, and everybody was sharing the movement that they've had in consciousness, and I was just in tears as I was listening to the demonstrations that our students are having. It never gets old. And I know that when I have that sense of awe, it reminds me that I'm right-sized. I know the power and the presence that is moving in as and through me, and I recognize that there is a power moving in as and through me. In our culture, we get this, all the messages and the self-help and the seminars, and there are great books about how we can become more of what we are. And I am here to tell you that you can never be more than what you are. Everything you need is already within you. Our job is to be receptive. Our job is to be available. Our job is to see where in us we are holding back, maybe we're limiting something, so that this law that just says yes, that is impersonal, that just wants to express by means of us, we want to make the passage clear. We want to make way for it. I talked about that. I think the invitation this week for us is to really make space. Make space for the revelation of the greater good that is all of who you are and so much more than who you are. To make space for that, we can do that through our spiritual practice. We can do that through spiritual mind treatment. We can do that through meditation. We can do that through sacred service. We can do that through tithing. There are so many amazing spiritual practices that will help to ground us in the power and the presence that is everything we are and everything around us. So I have a little, I'll call it a contemplation prompt that I would love for you to work with this week as we think about the way it works. And that is to ask yourself during your contemplation time or your journaling time, what I know to be true right now about fill in the blank. Might be what I know to be true about me right now is, what I know to be true about this situation is. A simple, open-ended question like that can help ground you. Because I don't know about you, but I am the queen of making stuff up when I don't have information. I make all kinds of stories up. And so there's a lot to be spun up about, right? We started our time together really just holding sacred space for our neighbors up north. That there's a lot to get spun up about. There's a lot to be afraid of. There's a lot to feel like things are, world is contracting. And if we can pause and create some stillness and ask ourselves, what is it that I know is true right now? And to get that clarity of what the greater truth is. And I'll just give you an example of my text message this morning, right? I got a text message from a board member. Can we talk for 2 minutes before service? Seemed urgent. Started making stuff up. What I knew to be true was that everything is in divine right order. That whatever came up, even if it was something I didn't want to hear about, that it was probably there to be cleared. The universe is always for us. It is always conspiring for our greater good. It wants to move through us, unimpeded by our limitations. And so our work this week, our joy this week, our opportunity this week, is to find those places where we limit this power and to give it more freedom within our lives right here and right now. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think that's lucky us, or I'm going to pray at the beginning of the service and I'm going to pray at the end. So here we go. Join me, if you will, in this affirmative prayer, knowing that the divine life force, that beautiful intelligence, that one infinite reality is available to each one of us. There is nothing holding, there is no way that it holds itself back. And so as we recognize our connection, our part of, we are the parts of the whole. And as we recognize that, as we remember that, as we recall that into our consciousness, we breathe easy. We let go of constraint, constriction, denseness, heaviness, over-efforting, and we just rest in the peace of the presence of the divine, knowing that it is all of who we are and it is all of what we experience. And so as we move through this week, we continue to keep our spiritual eyes raised up, and that no matter what we experience, no matter what we hear, all the feelings that might come up, all of it has an opportunity to be sifted through the perfection and the wholeness of the divine. So we make space for that. We make space for stillness. We make space for a pause. We make space for truth-finding within ourselves. And it is with a grateful heart that I simply surrender to the thing that makes the grass grow. And I know that for each one, we have a blessed experience of heightened awareness, of a greater connection, greater unity. And it is in gratitude that we anchor this prayer by saying together, and so it is.